The shock over the disaster in the English Channel with dozens of deaths is great. The day after the disaster, the blame continued between Britain and France, and one trace leads to Germany. Despite the tragedy in the English Channel with at least 27 deaths, many people have once again made the dangerous journey to Great Britain illegally. Dozens of migrants again arrived on the English coast on Thursday, for example, according to British media. The British government increased pressure on France to prevent the crossings. Prime Minister Boris Johnson called, among other things, for an agreement with Paris on the repatriation of migrants. That could be the biggest single step to destroy the business model of criminal smugglers, wrote the Conservative politician on Thursday evening on Twitter. Since the implementation of Brexit, Great Britain can no longer make use of a corresponding EU regulation on the return of asylum seekers. Johnson also published a 3-page letter to Macron that evening with further suggestions, including calling for joint patrols on French beaches. On Wednesday, before that, a boat capsized in the English Channel off the French city of Calais. At least 27 people died. As the BBC reported, citing French investigators, the victims were 17 men, 7 women and 3 children. French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said 2 people survived. They came from Somalia and Iraq. The French authorities arrested 5 suspected people, smugglers or traffickers. At least 1 suspect came from Germany. And Darmanin said, "The smuggler we arrested last night had German license plates. He bought these rubber boats in Germany." Johnson accused France of a lack of commitment. His spokesman pointed to the 62 million euros with which Great Britain supports the checks on the English Channel. The money was intended to stop migrants, the spokesman said. Former cabinet member Robert Jenrick said it was in the power of French President Emmanuel Macron to end the problem. According to Johnson, a meeting between the interior ministers of Great Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium was planned for Sunday to discuss the situation on the English Channel, but I'll come to that a bit later in this video. This year, around 26,000 people have already arrived on the English coast, 3 times as many as the entire previous year. "We are ready to provide on-site support," UK Interior Secretary Kevin Foster told the BBC. "We are ready to provide resources, we are ready to send staff and help the French authorities." The business model of people smugglers must be destroyed. French politicians rejected the British request to send their own officials to France. I would like to see the British if the French would do the same. The mayor of Calais, Natasha Bouchard, blamed Johnson and his tough migration policy for the crisis. Franck Darcin, vice president of the Hauts-de-France region, in which Calais is located, called on the British authorities to crack down on those behind the smugglers. They lived in London and earned hundreds of millions of euros. According to the Élysée Palace in Paris, President Macron expects the British to be willing to cooperate and not instrumentalize the refugee drama for political purposes. France will not allow the English Channel to become a cemetery, Macron said. In the UK, human rights activists and the opposition criticized the government's immigration policy. Instead of strict asylum laws, humane and safe routes to Great Britain are needed. Interior Minister Patel, in particular, is under pressure. The Conservative hardliner had promised to end the crossings. After Brexit, the government introduced tough immigration rules, which Patel now wants to tighten again. People who come illegally into the country should no longer be allowed to apply for asylum. Yeah, you should tell that to the United Nations then. In Parliament, Patel defended the idea of pushing boats with migrants off the open seas, so-called pushbacks. At the same time, she claimed, the UK has a straightforward and generous approach to asylum seekers and refugees. Minister Patel rejected criticism of her approach. The UK has a straightforward and generous approach to asylum seekers and refugees. I just repeated that one. She wouldn't even let anyone apply. The minister spoke of a global crisis of illegal migration. "We can't do it alone," she said. Close cooperation with France is necessary. And as I said, this year almost 30,000 people have been stopped on the way to Great Britain. This shows the extent of the problem. The number of asylum applications in the UK is currently higher than it has been in almost 17 years. The Interior Ministry announced that 37,562 people had requested asylum in the 12 months to September. That is almost a fifth more than in the same period of the previous year and a little more than at the height of the refugee movement in 2015-2016. As of the end of September 2021, 67,547 people were waiting for a decision on their asylum applications, more than ever since the evaluation began. Large numbers of migrants are still waiting in France. British media quoted several refugees who want to stick to their plans despite the previous day's tragedy. The strait between Calais and the English port city of Dover is one of the world's busiest sea roads, so to speak. The British Refugee Council spoke of a wake-up call for the government. The head of the Anglican Church, Justin Welby, called for a better immigration system of compassion, justice, and cooperation across borders. In the dispute over the political responsibility for the refugee drama with 27 dead in the English Channel, the French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin has cancelled a meeting with his British counterpart Priti Patel. In a message to Patel, he justified the rejection with a letter in which British Prime Minister Boris Johnson asked French President Emmanuel Macron to take back migrants. Darmanin wrote that the letter itself was a disappointment. The fact that Johnson had also made this letter public was worse. Instead, the responsible ministers from France, Belgium, the Netherlands and Germany will meet on Sunday together with representatives of the EU Commissions in Calais, northern France, without British participation, according to the French Interior Ministry. Haven't read today about the meeting that, when I'm filming, has supposed to have happened yesterday, but we will see. I'll keep you posted. Macron criticized Great Britain for his past during his visit to Rome on Friday. "You don't communicate with tweets or letters from one side to another," said the president at a press conference with Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi. What is happening in the English Channel is too serious not to be treated as a serious matter. I am surprised by the methods used by the British government. I'm sorry, Monsieur le Président, they don't surprise me with anything anymore, I'm sorry. In his letter on Thursday evening, Johnson told Macron to take the migrants back or significantly reduce crossings and save thousands of lives by fundamentally disrupting the business model of the criminal gangs behind the trafficking. Johnson suggested greater cooperation with France, such as joint border patrols, aerial surveillance, and the exchange of information. "We are ready to begin such patrols from the beginning of next week," wrote Johnson in the letter he posted on Twitter. And as I said, Interior Minister Patel had previously spoken to her French counterpart Darmanin to present plans for greater cooperation and innovation. The two should have met this weekend, but Johnson once again managed to, as we would say, smash a lot of porcelain, and he's sabotaging everything himself. In the accident with the refugee boat in the English Channel, there were 27 dead. That is something we must never underestimate. The group have left Dunkirk in an inflatable dinghy that was deflating. And shortly after the boat accident, the tensions they are on a high again now. And because Johnson has long accused France of not doing enough against the rapidly increasing number of refugees who are crossing to England in simple boats. But what does he have in mind? There is no way anymore to send them back to France. You wanted Brexit, you've got Brexit. That also means there's no Dublin Accord for you anymore. But the discussions about refugees don't stop anywhere else either. The Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki has criticized the Executive Chancellor Angela Merkel for her talks with the Belarusian ruler Alexander Lukashenko. In an interview with a German press agency, he welcomed the fact that the EU was taking part in a search for a diplomatic solution to the refugee crisis on the border between Belarus and Poland. But when Chancellor Merkel called Mr. Lukashenko, she helped legitimize his regime while the struggle for a free Belarus has been going on for 15 months, said the head of government belonging to the National Conservative PiS party. Merkel had phoned Lukashenko twice in mid-November, although Germany, like other Western countries, does not recognize him as a legitimate president. She had been criticized for this at home and abroad, including by the future Federal Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock. Government spokesman Steffen Seibert had justified the contact with a devastating humanitarian situation for thousands of people on the border. He also pointed out that the procedure had been coordinated with the EU Commission. But Morawiecki accused Lukashenko of misusing the phone calls for his own purposes. He said he pretended that Merkel had agreed to the transport of 2,000 migrants through a corridor to Germany and other European countries, and that is not correct. Well, I would say that's just a lie. Lukashenko only announced on Friday that Merkel had agreed to accept the refugees. Government spokesman Steffen Seibert had clearly denied that. He said, "I would like to say very clearly for the Chancellor and the federal government that this statement is wrong," he said. Morawiecki previously refused help from the European Border Protection Agency Frontex to secure the Polish borders. He said, "We have 15,000 border guards and Frontex has up to 1,200 border and coastal guards for all external borders of the European Union. In addition, 15,000 Polish soldiers are available for border protection, so our border is pretty closed." The Polish Prime Minister now sees broad consensus in Europe on refugee policy. Regarding the opening of borders in the 2015 refugee crisis, he said, "The previous refugee policy has proven to be a mistake. Most of the EU countries, with the exception of one or two, have understood that we cannot have an open-door policy and multiculturalism," and that's the right-wing piss party speaking there, I must say. What an idiot. Morawiecki rejected a common EU asylum policy. That's the problem. But he said that should remain a matter for the individual member states, but that is a problem. The head of government reiterated his offer to help finance the repatriation of refugees from Belarus, but he also emphasized that the EU as a whole has a duty to do. A few days ago, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen promised up to 3.5 million euros for this. The repatriation of the refugees has already started. On Saturday, another aircraft of the Iraqi airline Iraqi Airways took off from Minsk airport with destination Erbil. Another plane to Erbil was announced for the evening, as the airport announced. The border guards in Poland registered more than 200 attempts by migrants from Belarus to illegally cross the border of the EU member state on Friday. Since Poland does not allow journalists or aid organizations into the border area, the information cannot be verified independently. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.